Okay, we're live. So, good afternoon and welcome to our Spring Festival webinar session this morning, where I am delighted to be joined by an expert panel from the Belfast office of global law firm Baker McKenzie. So, before we kick off, can I encourage you all just to use the chat function on the right hand side throughout the session to ask any questions, and we will do our very best to get through as many of these as possible. So this session entitled Renew and Reinvent seems particularly topical in a world that seems to be moving at a frantic pace, and there seems to be a continual demand for us to learn, new skills or pick up new technology just to remain current. So on that note, I'm delighted that we have two experts here with us this afternoon. Declan and Mark from Baker McKenzie both have very different career paths, and I look forward to welcoming you both here this morning to introduce yourselves, tell us your story, and give us your advice on how we can renew and reinvent our way through our careers. Guys, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks. And we'll just begin off with I'll begin off with a quick introduction. I'll let Mark introduce himself later. So the first topic will be adapting to changes in the legal industry. And my background, I actually initially trained in Queen's as a social worker and worked then as a probation officer for a few years in West Belfast and Lisburn. Really enjoyed working in the courts and working in the legal side of it. So then decided actually to move across and study law at Queen's, which was at the time the Masters in Legal Science, the 2-year legal conversion course. So studied law at Queen's. It was, to be honest, it was a really highly regarded course, and the employability opportunities were excellent coming out of it. So and I suppose there was some amazing opportunities in it as well. I know we got involved in the London Law Tour, where we visited the law offices of a number of Magic and Silver Circle firms in London over a week-long tour. Got to do a lot of networking and got a lot of insights into how the firms worked. And that really set me up then for actually applying for a training contract with it's with A&L Goodbody, who are one of the leading Irish law firms. So I then qualified as a lawyer with A&L Goodbody, spent a bit of time working between Dublin and Belfast. And then upon qualification, I joined Baker McKenzie. I then worked with Baker McKenzie for nearly 5 years as a corporate lawyer. And during that time, I suppose, I'll get onto that a bit later. I got really interested in how the legal industry is changing and what those changes meant, and then changed towards service design, which is essentially the Baker McKenzie's innovation team, which takes charge of the innovation initiatives within the firm globally. So speaking of the changes in the legal industry, the changes can really be marked out by starting from the recession in 2008, and that really changed the balance of power away from the law firms towards clients, and obviously the cost pressures that they were under since this recession. And there was a big shift in power towards the client, and a move away from the billable hour and more towards fixed prices, where companies were much more cost conscious and were much more unwilling to put out to spend as much money on their legal services, and also moved a lot of the legal functioning in-house as well. So this has led to a huge disruption in the legal industry from 2008, and that there has been also at the same time that has been kind of exacerbated by new providers such as the big four traditional accountancy firms, but now the consultancy firms who have a huge number of lawyers, each of them, and legal departments, and have kind of really benefited from how they're structured and new ways of working. Also, alternative legal service providers, and we take Belfast. For example, you look at the likes of Factor and a number of other alternative legal service providers who are changing the way legal services are worked, and also the way clients can engage with legal services. And at this time this change has been really exacerbated again by legal technology, which of course with COVID has really accelerated in the last couple of years. But that's been ongoing for the last 7 to 10 years anyway. And if you think of the types of technology, it includes the likes of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and this can assist with analyzing contracts, also with e-discovery for our litigation in litigation, whenever cases are taken to court, where you, instead of trawling through thousands and thousands of documents, where machine learning is used to interpret and understand these documents and assist our lawyers with understanding them. Also, there's this technology which relates to contract automation as well, which is significantly reducing the time creating documents. And there is, I suppose, a perception that this technology will replace lawyers, whereas in fact we haven't seen that. In fact, what it does is it supplements what our lawyers do. It takes away a lot of the mundane tasks and leaves lawyers to do the real quality value add. But it actually requires that our lawyers change the way they work, because now it's not a case of just pen to paper, but obviously how this technology is then utilized to make legal services more efficient and higher quality for clients. And the new skill sets that are required, I know in Baker's we call it the new lawyer, takes into account all of this. And this is not just about legal technology. Legal technology has fundamentally changed, I suppose, the change in how law firms operate, in the sense that there's a huge amount of new roles that have come on the basis of this. So take, for example, you have like the likes of legal project management, which is a huge growing area, and an area where there's a huge amount of interest, I know, in Belfast, in our own firm, but across London, across New York, where legal project managers are highly sought after. Also, obviously, technology teams. Traditionally, obviously, if technology roles wouldn't have been seen as being in the place of law firms, but there's a huge push for recruitment for people who are very tech savvy and also with some sort of background in the law. You also have the likes of data analytics, which again, with the rise in machine learning, the importance of digital transformation and the use of data to assist with machine learning and the use of this technology, and how we then understand the data that comes from how we deliver our legal services is hugely important and a real growing area in the legal industry. And also, when we talk about legal operations, we're also talking about how our clients and how companies have now set up their own legal operations, which take use of legal technology. So many of the large multinational companies have created in-house their own legal operations, which utilize the legal technology in terms of contract automation, in terms of contract analysis. So that is, as well as fundamentally changed how lawyers work, because a lot of the work is done in-house. And what they do is, when they go to the likes of Baker's, they go for that really value-add legal experience. So again, legal tech is not the case where it is carving out our lawyers' role, and instead it's leaving them in a position where they do much higher value add and will give much more legal expertise, as opposed to the traditional role of junior lawyers, for example, where it would have been doing heavy amounts of document review. Instead, this year has led to our junior lawyers actually being able to specialize and actually become involved in much more high value work much sooner in their careers. So if we're to take an example of a case study, the first one is called Reinvent Labor, and this, I suppose, is to bring to life what has happened over the last 15 years. And Reinvent Labor was a project that I was involved in, and is involved in the innovation arm of the firm, where I worked with a partner in London. And if you may not be familiar with LIBOR, it's the London Interbank Offered Rate. Essentially, it's an interest rate that was used by companies, but is now being phased out, and was phased out at the start of the year. And to do that, basically, you had to trawl through an enormous amount of documentation, finance documentation, to identify where transactions have relied on the LIBOR interest rate, and then if the LIBOR rate is contained within these documents, you then have to work to transition away from LIBOR, so hold note-holder meetings, and to engage the relevant parties to transition to a different interest rate. So it's a very document-heavy transaction. It also involves kind of bringing together a lot of people, and then eventually, what we were looking to do is to create this end-to-end solution, which utilize legal project management, legal technology, or alternative legal services in Belfast, to create an end-to-end service which is higher quality and more efficient for our clients. So essentially, that we can deliver at a higher quality and at a quicker time frame, obviously to improve profitability and also the way we work within the firm. It's quite a bespoke project in terms of it was based for our corporate trustee clients. But I suppose what it does, it gives an insight into how the law firms have changed, in that with this particular product, this legal service, previously it would have been a team of lawyers in London who did the entirety of the drafting of the documents, of the contract analysis, and of hosting and the note holder meetings. Whereas after we had created this particular legal services, we got legal project managers involved throughout to coordinate. We got our machine learning contract analysis platform used to understand the documents. We use contract automation to create the documents. And this was all supported by our lawyers in Belfast, who were able to kind of stitch this together in a much more seamless way. And it showed basically how the movement from previously, where it was very lawyer heavy and maybe lawyers doing what they weren't really particularly qualified or best placed to do, which was the likes of project management or the high intensity work, and instead that was transitioned to people who are better qualified to do it using the right technology. And in the end up, we were able to provide a great product to our client. So that's one example of how it's changed in the last 15 years. If we then, I suppose, look to how it's going to change in the next 15 years, I know people seem to look as if a certain technology will change the legal industry. However, in my experience, that's actually not the case. It's when we look at the billable hour, which has been the traditional business model for law firms, and to give you a background, if it's where basically you're billed out according to how many hours you spend on a particular matter. It has been the predominant model for the last 100 years, but now it is shifting towards fixed fee and alternative fee and value price basing models. Now, this is still not widespreadly used across law firms. However, when it does, it will have a fundamental change in the next 15 years to how law firms are actually structured, because the billable hour, by its very nature, drives behavior that's not particularly compatible with delivering value to clients, because it can disincentivize efficiencies. I mean, essentially, the more time you spend on something, the more you can bill, and obviously clients no longer are no longer willing to accept this type of a business model. So the move towards away from the billable hour and towards different pricing models, it's about towards creating much more value for our clients. And also there's a huge knock-on effect then once it's done on a fixed fee basis. The sooner the work is done and at a higher quality, the more profitable it will then be. So actually the knock-on effect is that there will be a greater emphasis on using legal technology and using different legal resources to deliver the work quicker. So it will accelerate legal technology generally within the industry, and also new ways of working and who will work on it. There's also an implication on talent retention. I mean, traditionally the billable hour model has had a disproportionate effect on our female lawyers because of the requirement for high billable hour targets. However, this will improve diversity and inclusion, because the emphasis will be on the value created for clients, not just simply the amount of hours that you sit at your desk and do the work. So it will continue to have huge implications for the next 15 years, and will have a huge knock-on process improvement, on digital transformation, and again on technology. So just to finish up, when we think what that actually will mean for you, it's really important to continuously develop your skill set. And if we take the likes of legal technology, that's not saying that you need to be an expert on machine learning or legal technology, but understanding the concepts, how they may apply to you, and how you can utilize that to be better at what you're doing if you do decide to go into the legal profession. I think it's fair to say, and I think I'm proof that the fact I've moved from one career to another, staying in the same role for the whole of your career is largely a thing of the past. So I think the most important thing is to find something you're interested in, that you're good at, and something that kind of makes you that you're interested in, and dedicate your efforts to it. But be ready and willing to adapt these skills to different environments, and to look out for different opportunities for yourself. I think actually when I initially went and did social work and went into the legal industry, I presumed I would be at a disadvantage. Actually, that was the one thing that set me apart from many other applicants, because they saw I had real world experience of dealing with people in difficult circumstances. They saw that actually I had a different perspective on things, and I think it's probably largely why I then ended up moving towards the innovation side, because I did come at it from a different perspective. So there's no need to tie yourself down and think that you have to go into a certain profession from the outset, and that you're wedded that to the rest of your life. understand, just dedicate to what you're doing at the time, and it may open doors down the line that you never even expected in the first instance. Mark, happy to hand over to you now and move towards your part of the presentation.
Yeah, thanks very much, Declan. And I love the way you ended that in terms of, don't have your sights set on what you're doing now and think that is it for the rest of your career, etc. Because a lot of what I do involves actually reskilling people and developing people within the role here at Baker McKenzie. So just before I sort of go into what has changed for learning development professionals, what has changed for those within the legal industry in terms of how they actually do development, I'm going to just give a little bit of a rundown. So Declan and I, yes, we have different career paths, but we both came from the same institution. I'm also an alumni of Queen's. I studied history and politics back in 1999 to 2002. So it seems like a long time ago now. So I graduated from there in 2002, and then I went off to Liverpool Hope to do a postgraduate certificate in education as a secondary history teacher and politics as well. So I started out my career journey as a teacher. So I was still very much in that development field. It was always something I was passionate about. It was always something I enjoyed doing. But I was also very passionate about traveling. So of course I did what a lot of students do. And for anybody thinking in that way, I would always encourage to open your worldview to travel the world. And I did use my teaching skills out in countries such as New Zealand and Australia, where I also taught out there as well. And I thought that gave me so much insight into different cultures, different customs, which has helped equip me for the role I actually do today as well. So I returned from traveling in around 2006, and then I started, obviously teaching jobs are, for anyone who knows, are quite hard to come by here. So I seen an opportunity to go into corporate learning and development. And I took that and went in as a learning specialist at a local communications firm. And from there, I've worked in several different roles across several different sectors within learning and development. That includes tourism, technology, broadband technical support, government contracts. And as of 2016, I started in Baker McKenzie as a global learning and development specialist. I'm now the senior manager for our learning technology function within the leadership and learning section of our people team. And just to give you an example, I mean, a lot of people have learning and development within the HR function overall, and to a certain extent within companies that's true. It is an extension of that overall function. Within Baker, we have what we call a people function, which incorporates human resources, recruitment, learning and development, and talent management, all working seamlessly together, but within our own functions, so that we can offer the best within that people section to our people. So we're very people focused. So yes, I'm in the legal industry, and I've sort of moved on a few times within that. But the world of work, and I suppose over the last 2 years, has probably given every one of us an insight into how quickly things change and how quickly we must be prepared to adapt. So within the learning and development sphere, especially within the legal industry, Declan has gone through the changes within the legal industry and how lawyers now have to view how they develop differently, the tools that they need to use, and also having different backgrounds and different experiences can lend itself to being the lawyer of tomorrow, or the new lawyers, we like to call it in Baker McKenzie. So, if I was to conduct a poll with you on the call, or anybody listening after, on how you all engage with learning today, I would probably hazard a guess that a lot of you would say there'd be a variety of answers. Reading books, the traditional what we call chalk and talk method, a teacher just delivering a session in person. But I would also say that a lot of you now will tend to do what we call learning on the go. You're engaging with learning in the moment. So a lot of the things that you need to know, you'll quickly lift your phone, do a Google search, and try and find the answer through Google or YouTube. So we're consuming learning, as we like to say in the industry, very differently from how we would have done even when I was at my point, if you like, when I was going through university, when I was going through my early days in learning and development. It was very much in-person sessions. What we would have had is you would have had your work, and then your training and development sessions were set as a separate from that work. Nowadays, what we have is learning and development is very much a core part of the role. So as you work, you learn. So this is how we've had to change. Learning and development professionals no longer create PowerPoint presentations ready to deliver at certain set times and dates of the year. We have to be ready to create what we call digital content, and that digital transformation has certainly shaped how we do things. So if we think about digital transformation, bite-sized learning has always been something that has come even pre-pandemic. We were accustomed to the fact that people were consuming learning in bite-sized formats. People are quite busy in the legal sector, and I do a lot of development of our lawyers in the firm. They're very busy people, so it's very much a chance of how do we capture the best moments for them to learn, and very often it's giving them the onus to develop themselves, and that's what a learning development professional then does. What the COVID pandemic has done is accelerate the pace of that digitalization. We've all had to adapt very quickly. I know colleagues of mine, I was fortunate enough to have gone through in my previous roles working with digital technology in an e-learning company, and even earlier I was working at home for a year and a half. So I already had that experience in a company. So I didn't, none of it was really a shock to me, but I could certainly see with my colleagues how quickly they had to develop an ability to manage technology, to work with technology, and to do things like what we're doing here now, which is deliver presentations on camera, and to try and very much be aware of the tools that you're using, which we're all familiar with now, but it was a very quick change. There was, learner and development professionals have no choice now between whether they do what you call both synchronous virtual experiences and like live classroom sessions or live virtual webinars, or the asynchronous learning, which is our digital sessions, which is where we then will do them online, or we'll offer follow-up digital content, which can be accessed at a time of your choosing. So it's very much help yourself, self-serve learning. It's not so much that we will spoon feed it to you. You have to now come and get it, but our role is to provide as much as we can that will help you develop within your role. So it's no longer the skills as an L&D professional of just being that sort of classroom design and delivery piece. To be successful in this role, and certainly for the learning departments to be successful in the wider sphere, we have to evolve, and we've had to evolve to be much more tech savvy, to learn a broader range of design tools. So whether that's e-learn design, whether it's video animation tools, all of the things that maybe you've been familiar with or that you've seen, we've had to become quite familiar with that, and build courses and programs that blend that all together, so we can offer the in-person synchronous experience, but the asynchronous, help yourself learning as well. We've also then very quickly, and Declan talked about this as well, a little bit about reskilling. We talked around how what you're looking at as your career options now. You should always be prepared to think that 5, maybe 10 years down the line, perhaps you might want to look at different aspects of a career, different career trajectory. So reskilling. And again, the COVID pandemic has probably knocked this a long way up the charts than we would have had before, has become incredibly key for us in order to become future fit. For reskilling to be successful, we need our L&D departments and teams to drive what we call that culture change of learning, which promotes roles like coaching, feedback, experimentation. So this idea, and any lawyers out there will know lawyers don't really like to try things and fail. So we try to encourage our lawyers to fail safely, because that's how we learn best, and taking ownership of your learning. So we want our managers to have the ability to, provide feedback and coaching to their teams. So we provide the tools to the managers, whether that be sessions with us, whether that be digital tools that they can help themselves to become better coachees, better feedback providers, all of these things that they can then better their teams as well. And it all works in sync. So no longer does the sole responsibility for development sit with the learning and development professional. It sits with everyone in the firm, especially if you're within a management role. But even if not, self-development has become key in order to help progress your careers. The role of a learning and development specialist is to be able to provide the necessary content that will help you to develop as you need to in your career. So, providing these tools so that you can learn how you want and when you want is really key, because as I said, learning is no longer a set date and time. It's continuous within the role, within your job. And we talk a lot now about mobile. Learning should not just be, you need to open your laptop or turn on your computer. Learning should be on the go. People learn on their commutes or when they travel. A lot of that happens, and we need to facilitate that as well. So we need to find tools that will allow our people to learn as they go. Find those moments where where people are not working or they're not busy, but they can actually then take 5 minutes to learn something new, which can be critical or valuable in the next step. The self-driven and continuous nature of learning is really important. I mean, lots of studies that have been done have shown that learners now, and that's why I said if I did a poll, I could imagine a lot of you might suggest you want how you consume learning is by going to Google or YouTube, or maybe what you call self-directed or self-directed self-help learning. You don't typically maybe go to a bookshelf, or you mightn't go and attend a course now because there's so much at our fingertips. But around 84% typically on average in studies want that self-driven learning, self-directed. So in terms of what it means for an L&D professional, self-regulation, and also unlearning skills. And that's a strange word. Why would you want to unlearn stuff that you learn? Surely we should retain knowledge. In some cases, we don't want to retain knowledge. It's actually going to inhibit us from moving forward. So we need to do what we call that unlearning process, where self-regulation is the ability to actively assume personal responsibility for your own learning, which is what we encourage people to do within their careers. Unlearning is that deliberate act of letting go of what we call the bad habits or the outdated habits that are no longer fit for that future work, the future of work, the processes that no longer work. And Declan will have talked in his talk around how the legal industry is changing. From a very traditional industry, there's a lot of habits that need to be let go of in order to allow the future of the legal industry to flourish as well. And it's those behaviors that need to be changed as well, that mindset and cultural shift too. And that's important to drive that in our critical learning performance across the firm. So I just want to give you an example before I finish and we go to a Q&A of a little case study where the pandemic really gave us that jolt into how we had to take what is one of our flagship programs within the EMEA region. So this is one of our programs. You can see it's called the Senior Associate Development Program, SADP for short. We run these in all of our regions. So I run the EMEA program, and our colleagues in Asia Pac will run the Asia Pac program, and then we've colleagues in the Americas who run the North America program. They may call them differently. So in Asia Pac, Senior Lawyer Development Program, but we refer to our lawyers as associates within the EMEA region. And this course is typically for our senior associates who are what we would deem to be high performance. They have been highlighted by their local offices on a pipeline. They're on a trajectory to partnership within the firm. Declan made a really good point in his talk earlier about how his background has lent himself to be a better lawyer, better at his role as a lawyer. And a lot of what we do in terms of this program is to try and give our lawyers the skills they need to be successful partners, because at this stage in their career, it's no longer the technical aspect of the law that really matters. It matters massively to this point, and you'll become an expert in your specialism. But beyond that, it's that partnership's ability to reach out and develop these skills of, building relationships with clients, building relationships with people, and managing your internal teams. So people management is such a huge part of it. And indeed, in our partner promotion process, we place such a huge responsibility on the skills, a huge focus on the skills of people management and client client relations. So this program is huge for people going through it. When COVID hit in March 2020, or sort of largely hit us, I guess, in March 2020, our next program was due to run in May. So we run them in September and May every year. So that May, we couldn't run the program. There was just no time to really think about how we make what is largely a residential program, which we usually run in a hotel in person for 2 days. And that usually is just outside London. And we have people flying from all over EMEA coming in, usually around 24 participants to attend this program, which is a very intensive, very practical program, which involves actors playing the role of clients, actors playing the role of junior associates. It involves faculty members coming in to observe the sessions and then give that critical development feedback. So it's a very safe space to learn as well. We encourage our lawyers at it to not be afraid to make mistakes. You don't need to be perfect here, because the point of this course is to develop. So it is. You can imagine when the pandemic hit, we were thinking, how do we make a program which is so practical, so incredibly important for networking and contacts and people to be able to meet each other. It involved hotel stays, travel from the region. We had to then make this program run virtually without losing any of the core focus, the core skills focus. So after May and during the summer, when we usually get a bit of a lull in our learning and development courses and global sessions that we usually run, I set about trying to work out how I could transfer this from a residential program into a virtual program. And we landed on the fact that we would try and make this a program over 3 days rather than 2, sort of 2 half days and 1 full day. We would use Zoom, but we then needed to adapt and get our participants to learn how to use the tools and learn how to use them the right way. So we had to add a technology element to what was a session that never previously had one, to ensure that the participants knew how to use the tool, that the actors knew how to use the tool, and that the faculty members also knew how to use the tool, and that they were comfortable with it. So it added another layer to this program. We then worked with our events team to be able to set up seamlessly all of the background functionality of the Zoom tool, which was the one we used. So you can already see how much technical knowledge is starting to have to come into play to enable this program to run as seamlessly as it did in person. We didn't have to know any of that before. We quickly had to know it because we wanted to run this program in September 2020, which we did do. And we ran it, and we were able to up the numbers. So we were able to increase the numbers to 36 because without having the restrictions on hotel bedrooms and stays, we were able to increase that. We were also able to give a bit more flexibility to our lawyers in terms of the fact that they could join sessions remotely from where they were. It added time zone constraints to how we planned the sessions, which again was another level of that. But we made sure that no one was adversely impacted. So whether you were based in London or whether you were based in Dubai or in Moscow, you had a session at a time zone which was suitable for you to do. And it also allowed them to work it around their very busy work lives as well. So it had so many advantages, and the program was incredibly successful. And I believe I'm reliably informed by one of our observers who is an external consultant and a former partner from Denton's, that we were one of the first to ever do this, to take a program of this nature and make it virtual, and to have it run seamlessly without losing any of its core focus was great. We did have senior lawyers who didn't want to attend because they thought we'll wait until the in-person one returns. Obviously, the pandemic kept changing, didn't allow for that to happen. So we've run now 3 virtual sessions, and more people have become accustomed to how we deliver this kind of training. I do think we will revert to an in-person session and maybe offer a bit of a hybrid on this, because what does always miss from these virtual sessions, I think we could agree, is that in-person contact and the networking that you can't really do over a virtual Zoom, for example, versus what you can really do in person. And at that stage of a lawyer's career, it's really important that they have that connections from colleagues across the region. So I would say in the future, we will try and make this even more hybrid. We'll make it virtual, but also have in-person events which accompany it, so that we can get the best of both worlds out of it. But it's an example of how we've had to adapt and change incredibly quickly, how our lawyers have had to adapt and change incredibly quickly. And I think it gives us a good basis for showing how we can adapt and change incredibly quickly into the future. And for you guys, I would say that's exactly what we try to get across. You know, renewal and reinvention isn't hard with the will to do it and the skills that are there to be developed. So yeah, I think I'll stop talking now, Carl, and happy to take any questions.
Brilliant, brilliant, both of you guys. Really fantastic insights. And for me, as a spectator here, it's definitely whet the appetite for a career in both law and learning and development. There's probably a lot more to it, both areas than what I would have thought. Maybe a little bit more than what maybe is prescribed or what students have an expectation of in a career in law or a career in learning and development. And it's not the first time I've heard that the pandemic really has accelerated the pace of learning, and I think it's probably now also provided us with a benchmark of how quickly we will be required to learn things now moving forward and adapt. So it's set a dangerous precedent of how quickly we need to be learning moving forward. There's a few questions coming in, guys, so if I can maybe just start, Declan, with you for the first one. This is from a student studying law at the minute, so just at this juncture, not quite sure what area that she's interested in specializing in. So what would you advise someone who's kind of midway through their law degree and kind of still scratching their head as to what area they want to specialize in? Any advice for someone like that?
So at this point, I wouldn't, well, a lot of the times, the difficult reality is it is dictated by the market. But what I would say is that give yourself a chance to go and get internships at different law firms to get different perspectives and things, because there's a huge difference in going in the likes of, say, a regional firm where they're like an all-purpose firm where they'll do many different specialty, conveyancing, wills, probates, trusts, or to go to a larger commercial firm where you will actually specialize in one particular area within the firm. But I would say just to give yourself as much exposure as possible to different firms. And also just in Belfast, we're very lucky generally that so many now national or international law firms have moved in to Belfast, and to try and understand that market as best you can, because like you said, there are many more options. You can't take the option then, obviously, if you do want to train, you will have to get into the institute, and to get into the institute you'll need a training contract. I'm sure as a law student, whoever the law student would be very aware of how competitive that is. From my experience, I came from social work, and there was a probation. My interest wasn't the criminal justice side, but invariably in criminal law firms, there are very few actual interviewed training contracts that are open to law students. So that's why I ended up with a corporate firm. Because there were just much more opportunities for to interview with those particular firms. So it's about really understanding the market, what's out there, understanding that it's much broader now than if your interest is becoming a lawyer, going into the institute, that's great, but make sure you understand what type of firms that are available, where the training contracts are available, but also taking a wee step back and thinking, okay, there are many different competitors out there who really respect and really want a law career from Queen's, because it is an excellent degree to have to take into to many other different graduate schemes. So understand that it'll give you a wide range of options, to keep those options open, and to kind of just to really understand the market out there first before you do to take a decision as to what you're going to do.
And yeah, that's good advice. Just sampling as much as you can, sort of, trying to get your foot in the door, sort of in internships and placements and those sort of things seems to be the right sort of advice. There was another just question, maybe slightly an extension of what you touched upon there, the fact that there's so many more firms now in Northern Ireland who maybe changed the dynamic of somewhat of what you do within a law firm. But so one of the questions here was, how much time would you spend in court typically in a corporate law firm, or is it all kind of office based?
So in a corporate law firm, it would depend on the department. As I worked in corporate law, and I would have spent no time in the court at all. Obviously, we then do have there's different departments. So if and I'm taking my experiences from working in NL Goodbody, which is a firm in Belfast, where there's a litigation department where you would spend time in court. So there is the contentious side, where if you're involved in the contentious side, then you will have opportunities to be in court and spend time in court. Whereas at the transactional side, it wouldn't involve going. So corporate banking wouldn't involve spending time in court. So yeah, it does differ according to your specialty.
Perfect. Okay, great. Mark, question maybe more so for yourself. So there was a question here. I'd always thought I would have to study law after my degree to move into the legal sector. So do you think it's an advantage? Obviously, you're in the legal sector now, but you're not from a law degree background. Do you think it's an advantage to do something like a postgrad in law before you try moving into a law firm or the legal sector as such?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on what you want to do. I mean, I think if you want to focus on law, a specialism particularly, then obviously you will need to do a law degree. So, I mean, but if you're looking to just get into the legal sector and be part of that whole, what we call, I mean, we have a staff of 13,000. And more than half of them are non-lawyers. So that will give you an idea as to how many of those roles are not legal. So no, you don't have to have a law degree, or I wouldn't say it's advantageous to do one if your focus is not going to be law. I mean, I initially, when I was doing my A-levels, wanted to go to Queen's to study law, but obviously didn't get what I needed to get in. But I've come full circle, and now I'm doing what I like doing in the law firm. So I've kind of, if you like, married up the two. So I have my love of development with my love of the legal industry. So it's not necessary to do that, but I would say if you wanted to do law, if you want to specialize in law, then absolutely do a law degree. But if not, your skill set will still allow you to. There's so many roles, and I can see a question coming around service design, legal project management, business services, business development, learning and development, HR, the whole plethora of roles that can exist within law firms these days.
Great stuff. And I know, not necessarily to give you guys a plug, but I know that the graduate program within Baker sort of is designed in such a way that you do get a flavour of kind of each of the areas as well. So it sort of gives someone the opportunity to kind of sample bits and pieces of one area and one department, and sort of then at the end of it maybe decide which way you can focus your direction. Just sticking with yourself, Mark, just obviously someone who's studying looks like a similar degree as yourself here, history and politics. What single piece of advice would you give to an art student who has aspirations to move into the legal sector? What one piece of advice would you give that person?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's probably similar to before. I mean, I'm assuming you're doing your undergraduate degree in history and politics. Think about what you want to do. Do you want to do a postgraduate degree? Do you want to do a master's in the subject, history or politics? Think about what it is you want to do next strongly. And like I said, there's no avenue that shuts you off to get into the legal industry. There's so many different functionalities, whether you're an arts student, whether you're a social sciences student, a legal student, obviously will go into the legal industry, but there's so many options that are open now within legal services because it's such a wide array. I mean, the idea of that traditional boutique law firm where you might have had solely lawyers and maybe, some general secretarial staff is not the case anymore. These larger law firms like ourselves offer so many more roles outside of that. So I would say really think about what's the next step post your degree, your history and politics degree, if that's what you're doing. And then think about what it is next that will help you in your journey towards the career you want to do within the legal services industry.
Great. Okay. And we've got another student here who's gladly, I'm sure, starting as a graduate trainee in Baker McKenzie in September in Belfast. So do you have any general advice for that person? So two of the departments are service design and legal project management. So I'm sure you'll be able to give a little bit of customized advice there, Declan, on that one, but any advice that would be useful for that individual?
Yeah, I'd be happy to welcome them in September. But I would just say just to do your research in advance, just so you can really hit the ground running about understanding. And I'm conscious these are very, very new and quite, they're quite new and quite bespoke, but these are really, really growing areas in the industry. So reading as much as you can around it, understanding, I suppose, particularly with the service design, the philosophy behind it, what it's trying to achieve. I think with the legal project management, it's more specific and much more kind of the day-to-day running involved in legal transactions. So just trying to understand what will be entailed in those roles. And I know that program's designed to give you the broadest understanding of how the firm works outside of a traditional legal career. So it'll be a great insight into the firm and just exactly what is available in firms and the fact that they're moving towards, expanding and really developing their business functions as a way, and particularly in those two roles, in the way of assisting their lawyers in delivering legal services better. So understanding it through that lens, I think will really help you in advance.
Great. And I think to that student as well, I mean, hats off first of all, because you've come to this event today, and it's events like this, and there's kind of other resources out there which will really help you deepen your understanding of kind of what you're moving into. So be sure to kind of explore what those resources are and reach out. I hope you don't mind me saying, Declan, if you're on LinkedIn or anything like that as well, there's no harm in sort of extending your network prior to joining and get a little bit of a head start in terms of meeting some people even virtually before you join. So good luck with that, and well done on securing your graduate trainee role. You've both sort of maybe touched on this, maybe more so in terms of what you'd mentioned with one of the learning experience there that you touched on. So there was a question just from one of our students: are there any opportunities to travel in an international firm like Baker McKenzie? Does that come around very often?
Well, not in the last 2 years, unfortunately, which has been much.
That's granted. That's granted. Yeah.
Much to my dismay, of course, because actually prior to the pandemic kicking in, I was a frequent traveler. I mean, I traveled to Chicago a few times to work with implementers for our learning technology tools, and I've traveled all around Europe delivering programs as the EMEA Leadership and Learning Manager at the time. My role is now more global, so I would expect that there will be more global travel eventually when that kicks in. So yes, from my own experiences, lots of opportunities to travel, and one of the greatest aspects for me of working in a global law firm.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I did a 4-month secondment to San Francisco, which was a great experience.
Yep,
And
lucky you.
again, yeah, so and as well, same as Mark, spent time in Chicago and London, and then just due to the nature of it, and Bakers are very keen on the fact that people getting together and meeting. So it's something they're looking to get off the ground again. So each of the regions have a meeting, and usually in a fairly nice destination, and it's a good chance to go and see the world as well. So yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to do that here.
Great stuff. Okay, and maybe this is to both of you guys, or one or both of you guys. But and this is something I can relate to. I think with the emergence of some of the bigger firms into Belfast, sometimes we do get some weird and wonderful job titles that maybe we're not used to here in the local market. So some of these, would have look as if they have very specific experience required to them. Any advice? Should we start? Should we even apply for these roles, given the nature of the criteria is so very, I suppose, unique to Baker McKenzie, maybe?
I'll kick off, Declan, and if you want to add anything. The one thing I would definitely say, and I've said this to other people when I've been talking about careers and looking for jobs. I mean, kind of one of the offshoots of the role I do is that people come to you for careers advice, which is really good and rewarding, especially from a former teacher. Look at the job description. Don't look at the job title. Look at the description, because a lot of these titles, the description will really tell you what the role is. And could be just a really exuberant title, but the role itself is quite aligned to what your skill set and you have. So really look at the JD and then decide whether it is the right role for you.
Yeah, and I would just echo that and say that and understand that that you may have skills that can be transferred to this particular role. That it's not, you may not have had experience, say, in particular in a corporate firm, but that's that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is people who are adaptable, who can, and I suppose that's really the whole concept of this entire presentation, is people who can adapt themselves to different roles, and the fact that you can find skills that can transfer to what you've been doing, and that you're capable of adapting and improving yourself, and that you're open to that. And I think that's what's most important to people, to firms when they're looking for those particular roles. And even I think of an example of a colleague we were working with. I mean, he works in legal tech and ops, but has a PhD in medieval history. And on the face of it, you would think there's no relevance, but incredibly talented, unbelievable at his job, and the skills he has transferred incredibly well to the role he's doing now. Whereas on the face of it, you may not have thought it would have worked. So, like Mark says, look at the job description, understand that you actually may have the skills for for that job.
Yeah, great example there, Declan, too. Absolutely. So listen, I'm very conscious of time. You've sacrificed your time this afternoon, guys, and on behalf of all the students here at QB and the Careers, Employability and Skills team, thanks very much for sacrificing your time and giving up your time today. So Declan and Mark from Baker McKenzie, it's been great to have you along. It's been a fantastic discussion, and certainly the session will provide us with some fantastic bite-sized learning for our career development. I think some of the lessons that I've sort of picked up on today from both of you is that we all have to continuously evolve, to experiment, to fail safely, as you had said, to unlearn or get rid of bad habits, be prepared to reskill, and take ownership of our own personal growth to be future fit. So I think it's all fantastic advice. And again, really appreciate you guys coming along today. And of course, Baker McKenzie will be attending the Careers Fair tomorrow, so we hope to see you all there. Be sure to check the Spring Festival listings for details on all of the other activities related to the festival over the next couple of days as well. So with that said, guys, thank you very much again. There will be a quick survey coming up for you guys. Just I appreciate if you can fill that in at the end. And on that note, I wish you a great afternoon and rest of the week. Thank you, folks.